Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Grand Page. I am your most humble and obedient servant, Page Ghost. I want to talk to you today about Metroid Prime 4 and at least half of the conversation that's going on with it because I feel like it's just not accurate at all. And I feel like a lot of things are being forgotten about in this conversation around the game. I just finished it literally today, though not by this video's upload standards. So that would have been a few days ago once this gets uploaded. It took me around 14 hours to finish it, and that's pretty standard for most Metroid Prime games. They're not typically very long games. In a world that's very much saturated with games like Red Dead Redemption 2, Last of Us 2 that take like 20, 30, 40 hours to finish. I'm actually very thankful for a game that took only a little over 10 hours to finish. And that's not a dig at any of those games. There are some games absolutely earn that longer playtime. I just really appreciate that this one wasn't so long. More than anything because I was coming up on the end of my break between college semesters and got to finish the game because even during my break I'm busy taking care of my wife and daughter. So, but I there's been so much negativity around this game, and it's all a lot of that negativity. I feel like is coming from the fan base, the sort of original enjoyers of the Prime trilogy, and apparently it's a newer generation that's appreciating Metroid Prime 4. Now, before I get into my critiques of the criticisms against Metroid Prime 4 from those fans, there's nothing wrong with reaching out to a new generation, right? It's been 18 years since we got Metroid Prime 3, and if they just did the original Metroid Prime games and then just put it to the Switch, the only people that they would be trying to reach would be those Metroid Prime original fans. In order for a game to last, you need to market to a wide audience. Not necessarily saying that you need to update it for modern audiences per se, but what I am saying is that a game that is good can be good both by can be recognized as good both by fans and by new players, right? Because I don't agree with the interpretation of that updated for a modern audience, right? The way that that's sort of been sort of described as putting in a bunch of a lot of times people attribute that to putting in political messages, and I certainly don't agree with that necessarily. But that's not what was going on here in the first place. So there's nothing wrong with not necessarily updating, but trying to reach out to a more modern audience to try and get that wider appeal. There's nothing wrong with that. And this is absolutely still a Metroid Prime game, despite whatever changes that were made to it to make it different. So, my first criticism against those sort of fans that really love the original Metroid Prime trilogy, but then are really not liking this one because of all the new stuff. Aside from, actually, no, all three of the original Metroid Prime games did something new with either the Metroid franchise as a whole or did something new with the Metroid Prime series. For example, Metroid Prime 1, when it first came out, or not when it first came out, but when it was first hitting the media rounds, so to speak, right? We knew early on that Metroid Prime was going to be a first person perspective, and people did not like that. Fans of Metroid did not like that at all. They were worried it was going to be like Call of Duty or some other kind of first person shooter. People did not like that idea whatsoever. They were worried that Metroid was going to lose its charm, so to speak. Well, lo and behold, Metroid Prime is even still beloved today and is considered one of the best Metroid games. And if I'm not mistaken, considered one of the best games of all time. And it's so good that they even remastered it for the Switch. I played it through twice, I think, the remastered version. I played that game as a kid. Love Metroid Prime. But that made a lot of changes to the Metroid franchise that were at least not well received when first announced. Now, when the game first came out, it was welcomed with critical acclaim, right? It did very well in terms of being well received and all of that stuff. But I want to focus more on Prime 2 and Prime 3 because both of those games are not just mirrors of Metroid Prime. They weren't just like Metroid Prime 1.5, maybe changing a few things here and there. No, they were really vastly different, and they weren't well received when they first came out, at least by the fans. They might have been well received by critics and whatnot. I think like IGN gave them fairly good reviews, but like Metroid Prime 2 did not receive sort of critical acclaim from the fans until recent years. I've been seeing in my algorithm on YouTube people talk about Metroid Prime 2 Echoes, and they're talking about it like it's the best Metroid Prime game. When it first came out, number one, I loved it. I don't know if I liked it as much as Metroid Prime, but I liked Metroid Prime 2. It was super scary, and that feeling of having to go into the dark world, like that still gives me chills to this day. But when that game came out, it was not well received by people because of how oppressing the dark world was, the ammo system in it, and I forget some of the other criticisms that may have been laid at it, but bottom line, Metroid Prime 2 was not well received when it was first released. It's only been, how do you say it? It's only been, it's only been in recent years that people are starting to recognize that, oh, this was a really good Metroid game. And a similar thing happened with Metroid Prime 3. The biggest criticism with Metroid Prime 3, if I remember right, has to do with the controls because of the Wii. I don't know what people's problems were with Wii motion controls. I was a kid when I played these games on Wii, so I played like Twilight Princess, I played Metroid Prime 3, I used the Wii remote, and I wouldn't say it worked flawlessly, but there wasn't a frustrating aspect to it. There's a little bit of retry, and there's a little bit of trial and error here and there, but it worked. And not just worked, it was fun. It was fun swinging around my Wii remote like a sword. It was fun aiming my Wii remote like Samus's arm cannon, right? And people also kind of didn't like the story. They said that the bounty hunters weren't memorable because you meet them and then they're basically enemies and then you got to kill them. And then some people didn't like, this might have been more of a minor point, but some people didn't like that the larger world was split between other worlds. I think there's like 3 or 4 or something like that. But bottom line is the other Metroid Prime games, and especially 2 and 3, all did something different with the Metroid franchise and with Metroid Prime as a whole, just like Metroid Prime 4 has done. And when those Metroid Prime games did something new, they weren't well received whenever they first did it. And I'm really tired of hearing fans talk about the fact that Metroid Prime 4 did some new stuff and how they didn't like that they did new stuff. It's not a fair criticism at all when the Metroid Prime series is known for doing new stuff. And so it was almost expected that Retro Studios should do something new. And we shouldn't just get Metroid Prime 1.5 just that way it sells well, but instead they should do a really good game. And I would argue that they did. One of the biggest criticisms, more specifically about Metroid Prime 4, is the desert, and they say that it's bland. They say that there's nothing to do, and that it's boring. Things like that. First of all, the desert is meant to be a contrast from the other worlds. It's why none of the other zones that you go to is a desert, because it's supposed to be different from those other places. People compare it to a loading screen. Yeah, we've had loading screens that are transitions before. I'm sure you've played the new God of War series, right? Where you got to press a button. That's essentially a loading screen into a new area. I can't remember how many times, like every 10 seconds it felt like, particularly in the end game of God of War Ragnarok, where I had to press a button just to go to the next spot, and how many times I had to do that over and over again. And I realized, oh, it's a loading screen. That's what the button is prompting, a quick loading screen. Still frustrating though. Whereas the desert is not just a loading screen for the game to figure out, okay, where are you going next? What are you going to do next? Oh, you're going to this world next. Let me start bringing in some assets to start loading up, so that way it's prepared for when you go into that world and it doesn't take forever to load. But also, it's very relaxing. It's a very relaxing place. First of all, the bike handles like a dream. I don't think I've played a game where a motorcycle is this easily controllable as in Metroid Prime 4. Most games really struggle, I feel like, to translate motorcycle mechanics into the game, and then make it easy and fun to play. It is super satisfying and super fun to boost and to go up on dunes and catch that air time, and to do that Akira slide, right? Super, super fun. And it's not like they were lazy about the creation of the desert either, right? Like, you see sand like rising from it because of the wind, and things like that, and you see stuff off in the distance, right? It's not even like just pop in stuff like it is with Breath of the Wild or with Tears of the Kingdom. No, it's like you see bits coming up and it gets clearer and clearer. It's very, very well done, and it's a lot of fun to go on those bike rides. And then enemies are easy, but they do break up a little bit of that flow in the desert. It's there to make you pay at least a slight bit attention. So I really don't like this conversation around the desert. It's fine if you don't like it, because you don't like that sort of mindlessness that's associated with it. But I understand what Retro was trying to do. Number one, I get it. It's a loading screen of sorts, right? It's that Hyrule field from Ocarina of Time. I feel like that's a fair comparison that has been made. So it is a bit of a loading screen in that. But it's also a respite. It is a rest from the game, so to speak. Because when you're in those other worlds, you're in real danger. Versus the desert, it's a moment to just kind of take a breath. That's a perfect segue to the next piece that I want to talk about, is the criticisms of these worlds. I think there's like 5 specific locations, 6 if you count Chrono Tower. And people are upset about the size of these zones. Yeah, the size of these zones are about the same as the sizes from Prime 3. Again, criticisms were lobbed at Prime 3. Similar criticisms about the size of these places, that you don't explore the whole world and instead just parts of it. I get that most Metroid games have that aspect of exploring an entire world, right? You have the first Metroid where you're exploring, it seems like, all of the planet Zebes, or Super Metroid is the same place, right? They might have expanded it. because it was technically Metroid 3, Metroid Prime 2, SR388, right? Metroid Prime, you're exploring Talon 4, right? And it feels like you're exploring the entire world. But again, going back to that, how Prime 3 wasn't well received because you're exploring parts of the planet and not the whole planet. I just don't agree with this. You explore a desert, you explore a forest, you explore this sort of stormy, the Vault Forge, right? This stormy place with all this electricity and electronics and everything. Volcano, this ice place. Oh my gosh, the ice place was super cool. I loved that. That'll be my next topic. But yeah, this conversation around criticizing like the worlds and how they're not big enough. It's basically Metroid Prime 3. They divvied up the world into different parts and then called it all one world, and they made the desert sort of this transition place. People are also talking about like there's no sense of isolation. I can kind of understand this one to an extent. I still disagree though. So first of all, we've had games where Samus isn't completely alone, right? Probably the best example is Metroid Prime 3, where we get an introduction to like Galactic Federation troopers. We interact with them. We interact with the other bounty hunters for a bit. You're still largely on the mission on your own, but you still interact with them every now and then. I feel like Metroid Prime 3 did a pretty good job with those interactions. But getting more to the isolation of Metroid Prime 4. Again, they were trying to do something different because every Metroid Prime game has done something different. And admittedly, they went with kind of a crazy idea. What if Samus wasn't essentially alone this time, right? And the sense of isolation that you get with this is not you're physically alone. The isolation is that you are a giant among ants. Okay? These Galactic Federation troopers are not prepared for what they need to face. Like, at all. If you were not there, they were not going to leave Veros. They were not going to get off planet at all. And so, Samus is here. And she's really the only way these guys are going to get off planet. They help here and there a little bit, and I do have some problems with how they help. I'll talk about that at the end, sort of what my own criticisms are. But the idea is being alone in a crowd. That idea of when everyone else is freaking out, and when everyone else doesn't know what to do, Samus does know what to do. Samus knows how to move forward. Samus knows what to do, or at least knows to do something, and doesn't just freeze. And that is a kind of isolation. She is a giant among ants. She doesn't act like it. She doesn't act holier or higher than thou, but it's just a truth. That's why she's the main character. She's the main character because she is a giant among ants. And the Galactic Federation troopers really highlight that, especially with the more skilled guys, right? With the Sarge and the sniper dude that got his leg hurt, right? These two guys particularly are a lot more serious. They give off that not just soldier mentality, but also that leadership mentality. And even they are very much in the deep end, feeling like they can't swim. And Samus is jumping off like 20-foot dives and doing just fine, right? That's the idea that's trying to be conveyed there. We can certainly talk about how well it was or wasn't demonstrated, how well it wasn't done in the game. But that's the isolation aspect, or at least a part of it, is that these Galactic Federation troopers need your help. They can't do it alone. They need you. And no one is leaving without you. The other piece that no one's talked about is in these places that you go, there are a lot of points of no return until you get through that zone. And I absolutely loved this about Metroid Prime 4. I think they being the other team who did Metroid Dread, they did a similar thing in Metroid Dread where you'd get to this point of no return, right? You'd do some kind of action. Most of the time it was like kind of slide, and then something would fall apart behind you, or you didn't have Morph Ball yet, and you can go back the way you came. And so now the only option you have is moving forward. Metroid Prime 4 does that a lot, particularly in the ice zone. I loved the ice zone. I got Dark World vibes from like Metroid Prime 2 vibes from the ice zone, because it was just super oppressive. Those close hallways, everything was frozen, and you didn't know when something was gonna pop around the corner and try and get you. And there's a lot of parts, not just in the ice zone, but like in the mines, in the volcano place, where you move forward and there's no going back. And you either gotta, suck it up and you gotta, move forward like Samus does, or you just turn off the game and you never play it again. I absolutely loved that about Metroid Prime 4, is that point of no return, but still having to move forward. Fantastic. I absolutely loved it. So those are sort of my gripes against the criticisms, particularly from fans against Metroid Prime 4. This is not me saying that it's on the same level as Metroid Prime Trilogy. If you asked me, would I rather have Metroid Prime 4 or have the original trilogy remastered on Switch, or not even remastered, just ported to Switch, I'd much rather have that trilogy. And it's not even just because they're better games, it's just more so you'd get, number one, 3 games, so you get more Metroid Prime than just the one game. But also, Metroid Prime Trilogy was a complete story, right? Metroid Prime Trilogy deals with the threat of Phazon, right, that you discover on Talon 4, and what the Space Pirates are doing with it, how that develops into Metroid Prime 2 with Dark Samus, and then comes to a satisfying conclusion in Metroid Prime 3, aside from the little secret ending with Silux following you at the end. So that has more to do with the fact that you'd get more games. You'd get 3 versus the 1, and it has a nice, long, and complete, satisfying story arc, versus Metroid Prime 4 really leaves things up for a sequel. I hope that we get. We'll see. But that's sort of like what I would have preferred versus having Metroid Prime 4. That doesn't make it a bad game. Just because it's not as well regarded as the other 3 does not mean it's not good. It just means that it's 4th place among a bunch of other games out there. I will happily replay Metroid Prime 4 and have a good time with it, because it's just a good game. It's absolutely stunning. It is a miracle that they got this game to work on Switch. I don't know how they did it. They must have done some kind of witchcraft, because it is amazing how well this game works on Switch. So yeah, beautiful graphics, fantastic gameplay, a different kind of isolation. I get it. It's not the same kind of isolation that maybe fans of the series are used to, but there's still isolation there. They're still pushing forward, and Samus is still very much the hero here. Probably the weakest aspect of this is its story. And again, I think that has more to do with the fact that the other 3 Prime games are out there, complete, done. You can play them back to back. I think that's part of it. because you have that satisfying conclusion in Metroid Prime 3. Um, but admittedly, also, it has to do with its execution. The Galactic Federation troopers, they're not a problem because they're actually annoying. If they're annoying, it's because you expect a certain level of professionalism from someone who's apparently part of a military organization. Now, the robot and then the two serious guys, right? The Sarge and the sniper dude. Those help balance things out, but the fangirl and the nerd, the way they act does not give me the sense that they are part of a larger military force. You can make the argument that being teleported off world and being somewhere that they don't recognize throws them for a loop mentally. They're figuring stuff out. I still personally expect a certain level of military bearing from people who are apparently part of a military organization. That's just my take. It is also weird to hear very modern terms like red velvet cake, and it's about to get nerdy in here. It is strange to hear those more modern talks. That doesn't mean there isn't cake in Samus's world. Doesn't mean there aren't nerds in Samus's world. It's weird to hear them because terms like that are not typically used in Metroid games. To be fair, terms like that haven't been used in Metroid games because we don't usually get this much interaction with other characters like this. And they might not have known exactly what to do with that. So it does pull you out of the experience all of a sudden. It doesn't necessarily make it like bad. It's just you start wondering, am I in my world or am I in another world? Silux, you don't really understand what's going on with Silux until the very end. Whether or not it's a problem that he's not in it as much as he should be, that might have to be left up to the individual. I've kind of come up with my own sort of reasoning for what happened. But his boss fights, super cool. Great boss fights, especially the final one. Just good boss fights in general. Really, really great boss fights. A lot of fun. So the gameplay definitely still great, but narratively with Silux, I get where people are at with that. However, the explanation for why he hates Samus, I don't agree with everybody having a problem with that. Because everybody's like, oh, well, it was his fault, so why is he blaming Samus? Yeah, that's called being arrogant. That's called projection, right? These are common human flaws that we have, that likely all of us have to some extent. And to say that he wouldn't have them doesn't make sense. So the fact that he's projecting his own failure onto Samus actually makes a lot of sense for the situation that plays out there. He wanted to believe that he didn't need Samus. Just this sort of savior-like character for the Galactic Federation. They're constantly calling her to help out with things. He wanted to think that he didn't need her, and he hates the fact that he needed her. It's a very easy explanation. It's a very understandable reason why he hates her so much. And he's shirking his own responsibility about what happened and instead projecting on her. It's a very easy explanation that works, narratively speaking. I just wish Silux would have been in it more. It's explained why he's not, but I would have liked to have seen him more. So maybe we'll see him more in Metroid Prime 5 if we get Metroid Prime 5. But yeah, this is just sort of a rant, I guess. That's kind of what it became. about the conversation around Metroid Prime 4, particularly from fans of the original trilogy. We haven't had a Metroid Prime game in 18 years. It was never going to be the same. It was never going to live up to fans' expectations because it'd been 18 years. Nostalgia had set in. You forgot all the problems that you had with it when it first came out. You look back on those days and those games with rose tinted glasses. And because this is so different, and it's because it's for a different system, and they had to change things for that, there's a lot of upsettedness around things like that, and I don't agree with it. This game is being panned by like half of its fan base, just because it's not what they wanted. It was never going to live up to your expectations. You should have had an opener mind, or better yet, you should have better criticisms. I feel like to lob at this game. This has legitimate problems. This isn't me saying it's a 10 out of 10 game. This has problems, but it's a good game. It's a good game. It's a fun game, and there's no reason to try and portray it otherwise. So please, if you've been listening to other people and not giving it a chance, please, I hope that you come away from this and think at least give it a chance on that. If nothing else, it's worth getting as a powerhouse of what the Switch 1 can do because of how gorgeous this game is on Switch 1. And the boss fights. The gameplay is great. So don't let the detractors say that this is not a fun game. The gameplay is fantastic. The boss fights are fun. The sense of isolation is there. Getting stuck, having to move forward, all that's really great. Rant over. I really wanted to try and set the record straight there because this game is better than people are talking about it and deserves more than it's been given. With that all being said, I am your most humble and obedient servant, Page Ghost.